So our pro-slavery labor secretary is under fire again because of the weird ways in which she and the men in her direct orbit in her family decided to engage with staffers. And I think this is particularly important because I think we're all talking about the culture within Congress in which there is a lot of sexual pressure when it comes to pleasing members of maybe the administration or Congress for like access and to keep your job, right? And so they bring up the fact that like her husband at one point was actually banned from the labor agency or department building because he was just touching people inappropriately. And the New York Times actually got some of the text messages that her father was sending to staffers. And it goes into the ways in which people talk about these unsafe work environments. So here we go. Here's the first one. Richard Chavez wrote to a young female staff member, "Hearing you are in town, wishing you would let me know. I could have made some excuses to get around and show you around. Please keep this private." "Will do. No need to worry," the staffer said. That she'll be in Oregon soon. And then, "When you are leaving, and where are you staying?" Like, people talk about how this was something where members of Congress would just show up to random young female staffers' rooms after hours, right? And so I don't know what Richard Chavez is doing, but why are you texting a young staffer about details that you don't need to know, right? You are not the labor secretary. Why do you need to know that? And then I'm gonna read a particularly weird religious themed flirtatious text that her husband was sending to the same staffer that her father was texting, where he says, the staffer said that she was gonna check in, and that time she was in Oregon, and he says, "You better. I was feeling forgotten. I figured you were still in church repenting after your exposure to the demon state of Oregon." And that's just, I don't, these are just so creepy. I don't understand. These people are weird. Why are you being so creepy? And I'm just, just the idea that these men are in proximity to the power and they are abusing it like this, right? And we talk about the ways in which Eric Swalwell was directly had power, and he always had these like, I guess these weird instances in which people knew about him. Apparently, I've been kind of learning about how Kevin McCarthy was talking about Eric Swalwell and how it was an open secret that young staffers or reporters knew to just not be around the guy if you were alone because that was who he is. I'm just wondering, like, how deep does it go? Is it everyone, right? Do they all know, right? How many people knew about Lori Chavez, DeRemer's father and her husband, right? And she's in hot water because of the ways in which she's been abusing her power, right? And this is another thing that the article mentions is that she's always drunk, right? She's a drunk, she's a wino, and how the last part is how she's having staffers bring wine to her room, like during the day. And I'm just like, all of these people want to project the idea that they are the most competent, they are the most electable, they are the most this, that, and the third. But all they are just weird, drunk, serial abusers that literally just make things worse. And I want to cap this off by saying Lori Chavez-DeRemer, as a part of Doge's cuts, justified cutting anti-slavery funds and anti-child labor funds in the world. And that is a major issue, right? And not only is she doing that, she also has men in her proximity who she's defended in some instances a bit, right? Who are basically pursuing inappropriately her own female staffers. So, like, what is the culture within that particular department? And it goes into how all of these members of the Trump administration are building up their own little kingdoms, and they're all doing this weird nefarious actions, and they're all this information's coming out, and this is not how you build a competent government, right? And anyone who voted for this kind of government because it would cut the waste, fraud, and abuse, right? We're literally seeing that they're not doing that. They're actually making things worse. That when you actually go into how government funds are utilized, now outside of the military not being able to successfully pass an audit for like a decade or more, the funds are used pretty efficiently. and that you do actually do need staffers who are experienced enough to know how this money should be flowing, and that we never needed a Doge. We never needed any of these firebrands who apparently want to blow everything up and reform it. We never needed any of these people, and there was a reason why people like this were not in power. But for some odd reason, people decided to stay home, or they didn't like the woman. They thought that she was not tough enough on the issues that they cared about, and instead, we invited the entire clown car into this administration. Um, just accelerating all the craziness that's happening. So, yeah, it's gross.